Of course, Rational, AppScan, QRadar, SPSS, Cognos, and Aspera. Shan, I'm going to pass over the mic to you, and you can take it from there.
All right, thank you, Ingrid. So as Ingrid was mentioning, what we mean by the JAS plugins is within the collaborative lifecycle management solutions, there are a number of customizations that comes out of the box that you can do. Whereas if it is business-specific customization, for example, if you have a number of work items that have parent-child relationships, you can set up a operation that is something like whenever all children tasks are completed, go ahead and automatically close the parent task. That's one scenario. Or if there are important and sensitive tasks, you can ask for somebody to provide an e-signature and password before that task can be closed. So these are some of the real-world scenarios that are customizable, and SCM Solutions provides those plugins that you can install to avail those customizations. And CONCORD, typically in an enterprise, a number of ALM tools are used, JAS being one, and they may have other solutions like HP, BMC Remedy, or Bugzilla. Nowadays, a lot of folks are using Jira also for change and configuration management. So CONCORD is the product developed by SCM Solution that provides integration between these tools where you can configure mappings between two ALM systems. For example, if your QA team is using HP ALM for defect tracking, whereas your developers are using IBM JAS for development, you can integrate the two teams. So whenever a defect gets opened in Jira, for example, or HP ALM, you can bring them over to IBM JAS for developers to collaborate on and synchronize the data back and forth. So that's what CONCORD does. So as you see in this diagram, there are a number of integrations available from our company for the tools that you see here. Having said that, let me jump right into our webinar series today. I'm going to be performing tasks that are typically done by RTC administrators, project managers, team leads, business analysts, developers, and QA today in the session, because CLM is really, it's a seamlessly integrated tool that offers requirement management, change and configuration management, quality management, and project planning and tracking all on a single platform. So we're going to do some of those functions so you get an end-to-end overview and a feel for what the tool offers. Having said that, because of the limited time we have, as Ingrid mentioned, please, we would welcome questions, but please do go ahead and type them up in the chat window, and we will respond to them after the webinar. All right. So once you deploy the JAS solution in your environment, typically the work would be starting with an RTC administrator who would go ahead and set up the projects for you. So let me go ahead and log in. So once the administrator has added all the people that are part of the project into a JAS repository, you can go into a lifecycle project administration function here and create a project that would cover requirements management, change and configuration management for the development team, and QA. So from the menu, you pick the Lifecycle Project Administration, and then you go and say Create Project. You provide a project name And as you see, the product comes with templates that you can readily choose for each of these areas. Requirement management has templates for traditional waterfall-based requirements management, or if you're following agile methodology or a use case model, you can choose appropriate template. Likewise, for development, if it is Scrum-based or SAFe methodology-based, you can choose the appropriate template, and QM offers few templates as well. So you would select what process you want to follow in CLM, and then provide the name and create the project. So what it would look like is, once you create the project, as you would see, I'm going to be using an example project here called CONCORD-ALM Synchronizer. That's we use the same tool for our own development. As you see, it created all the 3 components for my collaboration. Now, once these projects are created, the next thing you would do is add members to each of these projects. So as you can see, I'm going to open the change management project, and requirements in a separate tab, and quality management in a third tab. I might be switching back and forth between these windows so we can see the scenarios for each of these function areas. So once a project is created, you go down here and you add members to the project. So whoever is in the repository, they would be available here. You simply select which team members are part of this project and select the user and say finish. And once the members are added, you can assign them specific roles. In the Scrum methodology, you have a Scrum Master, team member, product owner, stakeholder, etc. So you assign them the roles, and then you're done. The initial project setup is completed. You have the option to create these projects individually. What I mean by that is, say you're not using the requirements module component of CLM. You can only create change management project alone, right here. Or you can create quality management project alone. But the advantage of creating it as a lifecycle is that it automatically provides associations between these 3 different types of projects. As you see here at the bottom, implementation requests and defects come from the change and configuration management project. Those would be readily available for view within requirements and within quality management. Likewise, you can access the business requirements or functional requirements that are available in the RM module within the CM module or quality management module. So that linking is automatically done if you create it as a lifecycle management project. Now, based on your environment, there may be a number of customizations that might be required as part of the initial setup. For example, you might want to set up, as a project manager or a team lead, you might want to set up timelines for your project. So here in this example, I have at my main timeline, and I have a release coming up scheduled for July 23rd, and I have few sprints, each running 2 weeks. And then you can obviously go ahead and create more iterations as per your individual need. And you can also customize roles. If you don't want to call it a Scrum Master or team member, if you want to call it something else, or you want to create your own roles, say technical lead, architect, and whatnot, you can create a role here and utilize it in your project setup. And then you would want to control the permissions for each role. Who can do what? So within change management, for example, you can do work item management to track your changes. You can do source control. You can do build, reporting, or managing the dashboard for everyday view. You can control who can do what operation by modifying these permissions set up here. Preconditions and follow-ups. Precondition is a condition that is checked prior to a work item is saved. A work item can be a task that you assign to a team member, or it could be a story that outlines what the functionality is all about. It could be an impediment, noticing an issue. So prior to creating and saving that work item, what are the conditions that must exist? For example, certain fields must be populated like owner or due date. You can specify those conditions here. You can go ahead and edit, and as you see, there's a precondition, and you can add a number of prepackaged conditions that come shipped with the product and choose them. In this case, I have selected required attributes for type and state that say whenever a work item is in a particular state, whether it is new or in progress or closed, make sure certain attributes are populated with values. So you can set up those conditions, and similarly, a follow-up action is something that is executed after a task is completed. In this case, for example, whenever a member gets added to a project team, you can execute a follow-up action to say, send an email to that person that was added to the project. So you can customize those operations here on this project. Access control. You can limit who has access to this project. Obviously, anyone who is in the JAS repository, once they have membership and account and license, they can read it, but you can restrict to say only the members of this project can read the data within this project. You can also exclusively specify and limit access to a particular set of users, or you can do a combination. Members of the hierarchy as well as users in this list. If you select that, it's going to give you an option to add from the list, and you can add those users. Categories. Categories are basically groupings. If your team environment is divided into multiple teams by component of business function or technical area, for example, a web team or a database team and an architecture team, you can create those categories here and assign them to each team. So what will happen is when you create a task, for example, and you choose a category, it'll be assigned to one of those team members from the architecture category. So that's the purpose of that. Likewise, you can define the releases for your project, and so that pretty much covers some of the customizations that you can do. There's also an option where you can change the entire process, the process description itself, by going directly into the process description and modifying them. For example, you want to add additional plans, you want to have a predefined dashboards, you can do all of that here. If you don't want to call priority high, medium, and low, and you want to call it critical, severe, and not important, I'm just speaking about example, but just to give you an idea, you can do those customizations individually within the process itself. That is, you can modify the template itself and save it as a new template and create a new project from it. So those are some of the tasks that typically are done by an RTC administrator with a combination of project manager and team lead roles. And similar customizations can be done in all three CLM areas. This is change management, and they all have similar look and feel. For example, if you go into the requirements module, you have similar options to customize the permissions, roles, and timelines and whatnot, and ditto in quality management. So now we have created a project, and we have added a member, and then let's go ahead and let me assume a role of a business analyst. So what would I do? My job would be to create business or functional requirements and then bucket them into certain groups and make them available to the development and QA teams. So I would go into the requirements module here. And as you see here, Shan, that's me, I have the role of an author who can author documents and artifacts within requirements module. Let's go and explore the project. So that brings into the dashboard view of the requirements module. By the way, these dashboards are customizable within the requirements and quality management and CCM areas. All the components that you want to make it available within a dashboard are available as widgets. You just have to add widget and choose a particular category of widget that you want to add. Say, for example, project and team. So whenever somebody logs in and they go in, you can show a list of team members on the dashboard. Or you can show the project timelines. Or you can show who commented recently on the artifacts that are stored within, or what has changed within the project, within the requirements module that you want everyone to see. You can just add that widget and it would come up in the dashboard. So here there are predefined widgets that are here that I have set up for today's presentation, the recent changes and performance health check and reviews and whatnot. So as a business analyst, as an author, now I want to create requirements. I would just go into the artifacts module and browse artifacts and just say create whatever type of requirements I want to create, whether it's a feature or is it a graphical artifact, non-functional, storyboard, etc. So what I would do is create. I would supply initial content. We'll call it reporting. Let's just call it a traceability reporting requirement. And what is the artifact type? It is a feature. I can choose. If it's a user story, I can choose that, or it's a non-functional requirement, for example, performance requirements. So you can choose the type and then say save it. And you can also choose under which folder you want to save the artifacts or business requirements. On the left-hand side, you see that the number of folders are created. You can create your own folders under and get your business artifacts organized within those folders. So this is it. I just create an artifact and it is going to open it up, and I can provide the details of detailed requirements here and set some of the properties, like what is the priority on it and what is the status. Is it a draft, under review and approved and whatnot. Difficulty level, all of that. And I can also provide links to other artifacts from this artifact. So and once you save, it is going to be available under our artifacts. Let's go take a look at them. It's right there. Now, you can also, there's a menu option that's available at the artifact level where you can do a number of operations, like copying the artifact, locking the artifact, duplicating it, or exporting it into a PDF document. You can do all of the operations right from this context menu here. So now that I have created a bunch of requirements or artifacts, I can organize, in addition to creating folders, as you see here, you can create a folder here and put these artifacts into those folders. You can also organize business artifacts into collections or modules. So what's the difference between a collection and a module? A collection is basically a group of related artifacts. For example, I have release 6.0 coming up. I want to group all the requirements under release 6.0 into a collection. So I created a collection, and I can just go and add existing artifacts into the collection. Bring all the artifacts that I created into this bucket. Whereas a module is a group of related artifacts that has a hierarchy and order. What I mean by that? Let's take a look at the module here. As you see, I mean, some of you who are familiar with the old style business requirement or functional specification document, there are multiple sections within the document: executive summary, scope, and then a list. It follows certain format and multiple sections, and there are subsections. So it has a hierarchy, as you see here: 1.0 executive summary, 2.0 scope, 3.0 list, 3.1, 3.1.1. So you can do the hierarchy and order within a module. So that's the difference between a module and a collection. So what we are going to do, in addition to creating artifacts and grouping them into a collection or module, say you want to, you have a team that is creating requirements in a Word document as some other part of the country or some other part of the team. You can also import those as artifacts into the requirements module. In addition to the customizations that we talked about, you can change some of the look and feel and field setup, etc., within the requirement module. What I mean by that? So let's take a look at managing the project properties. So as you see here, there are options where you can customize what type of artifacts you want to create. I don't want to call it a feature. I want to call it BSD, a business specification document. You can create your own artifact types. What are the fields that you want to place on each artifact? You can create those attributes and set what data types they are, and then they will be available for each artifact that you would create. Likewise, you can also set up templates. If you want the team to follow a certain template, not randomly create artifacts, you can create a template for a requirement artifact with sections and then import them into requirements module and then use it for creating your artifacts. Okay, so now that we have created a bunch of requirements here and grouped them into collections, I want to hand this over to the development team and the quality management team. So the development team can continue with the construction, and the quality management team can begin preparing for quality management tasks. So let's take this one at a time. So I'm going to switch into the change and configuration management application. As you see here, this is the one that we saw. And let's go ahead and explore the project. Now I'm going to perform the role of a team lead or a project manager. I mean, what would be the few things that I would do? I would obviously want to set up the plans. And if we are following a Scrum methodology, there is a product backlog, there is a release backlog, and there is a sprint backlog. So you can go ahead and create each type of those backlog. Product backlog would contain your global requirement set, and then you would move a subset of them into a release if your product development or whatever project is about is broken into multiple releases, and then move the subset further into each sprint. So all you have to do is create appropriate plan here and say create a release backlog. So you give it a name and choose who is the owner of the plan. In this case, it is a project, and what type of plan it is, and give it a name and save it. So I'm going to go ahead and show you a list of plans that I have or that I created before for this webinar. Actually, these come readily available if you are deploying the Scrum template. There is a product backlog, release backlog, and sprint backlog pre-created for you. And you can create additional plans as needed, as they showed just now. So I have a product backlog, and I have a release backlog, and I have a sprint backlog. Let's take a quick look at the release backlog. All right. So it gives the plan details and what release or timeline it is going to follow, and what are the items within the release. So here I would like to show how we can establish the linking between the plan and the requirements that are in the RM module and the test plans that are in the QM module. Say, for example, I can click on the links here and then say add a link, and as you see, you can say this plan implements a requirements collection. The moment you choose that, it is going to give you the option to select which project that is actually coming from the requirements module, that where we established the link before to lifecycle product creation. If there's not one existing already, you can create a new collection. But since we already went into the requirements module and created artifacts and collections and whatnot, let's go ahead and choose one of them. And if I search for it, you'll see that these are the collections and modules that are available from our module. I can choose that, and then it will automatically establish the linking between the plan and the requirements module. This is actually pulling data live from the R module. Likewise, you can also add a link to this the plan release backlog. Of course, you can name it any way you want. Will be tested by a test plan that is contributed by the QM module. And as you see here, once you click, it is going to bring the data from the quality management RQM application and show you what are all the test plans available. So now your planning is complete from team lead and project management perspective. Once you have established the linking between your development and requirement and QA, now you want to break down your plan into more detailed tasks and stories. So let's go ahead and so these are the requirements that it brought from the requirements module that are here. Source server configuration, target server configuration, these are all individual requirement artifacts. It brought them over into the change and configuration management. And then right from here, you can create a story for each one of the requirements that are from ARM. You just click, and it is going to give you a window to give it a name for the story and assign the story points, which basically your complexity, and assign ownership, and specify your acceptance criteria and save it. So now for each of the requirements that you have from our module, you have a bunch of stories that are created for the development or construction team to utilize. Then you can, of course, further break it down into the tasks and subtasks and whatnot. So this is where the change management comes into picture, breaking the tasks and items into multiple work items. Let's take a quick look at the story that we created. Obviously, I clicked on the requirements. I want to click on the story. So this gives you a flavor for what a work item would look like. So you can obviously create a work item directly from the work item menu here, and these are the types of work items that are available in this template, but you can again customize and create your own work item type. If you want to call it, say, build action or an architecture work item, you can customize those here. So here I'm using the template as is. I can create a defect, task, story, an epic, a build item, or an impediment, a retrospective, etc. Now, once you say create that work item, it's going to give you that window where you fill in your summary and populate the appropriate fields, given a description, and you can also do attachments here. You can just drag and drop any files and images and web links that you want to add. You can just choose your window and add them here. And you can also add a review process where you can choose whether it is a review or it is just a verification or does it need an explicit approval. You can add those approvals and review process here and choose who is the reviewer that is responsible for the task, for the review task. So this is how a work item creation looks like. Now, let's just assume that I have created a bunch of stories and I have created the task. As you see here, I just went ahead and created a task. Let me open up the story here. As you would see, I have created a task 538 that is a task for the developer. Develop and unit test user login function. For the story, user login function. So this task would be assigned to the developer, and then I have added that as a child to the story so that you would know what are the dependencies on the story. Likewise, you can add other type of linkage if it is a duplicate, or if you have a defect that is created, you can say this story is affected by a defect, and it's going to give you a window to choose what defect it is. So now we have created stories. We have a plan in place. We have a bunch of tasks created for the construction team. Now the developer is going to start development and do some source control. I mean, obviously they can't do the source control right here in the web interface, although you could do some of the tasks, but primarily they're going to be using some kind of an IDE, a development tool. Eclipse comes shipped as with CLM as the RTC client, and have it open here. So once you open the Eclipse client, the first thing you would do is create your JAS repository connection. Now I'm performing the role of a developer. You would specify with the web URL, user ID and password, and say OK, and that's going to create the connection. And then once the project is, the repository connection is available, you can choose manage project areas and pick the project you're a member of where you're going to be doing your construction. So I selected that, and as you would see, the same options that you have on the web interface, the work items, the plans, the source control, the build, and report, they all are available within the rich client as well. So if I'm a team lead, for the developers. Obviously, I would want to have a branching strategy, and in RTC, that's accomplished through streams and components. So within source control, I probably would be setting up a bunch of streams. And if my branching strategy is, for example, I want to have a branch for development, I want to have a branch for integration test, I want to have a branch for performance test, and I want to have a branch for production, and say a separate branch for maintenance. So I would create them as streams. That's just one stream strategy, and depending on your individual development environment, you might follow a different branching strategy. So all I have to do is create a stream and assign who owns the stream, so that the access control to the source code is restricted to the ownership as defined here, and who is it visible to. And within the stream, you can add a component. A component is basically a mechanism for grouping all logically related source control item. For example, if you have a typical 3-tier application, you may have a bunch of files for the web component and a bunch of files for the server and DB. You can group them together into components. And the component will have multiple Java projects within. So within a stream, once you have created, let me actually open up the stream here that I have created. You can go ahead and create a new component. So I have created a web and server here for a simple setup, and then you save it. And the flow target basically specifies what is your flow. Whenever you check in your code and deliver, where should it go? That's what the flow target is. You can choose multiple screens and workspaces and from the available options, and add a flow target. To show that via an example, let's just choose my workspace. As you would see here, from my workspace, that is Shan as a developer is working in his own workspace. Whenever he delivers his source code, it is going to flow into this particular stream, CONCORD-RTC Jira release 5.0. So say for example you want to promote, if everything is done in development stream, you want to promote that into the next level, integration stream. You can do that as well, where you would add that flow target here. So now that we have established some streams and components, now it is ready for the developers to write some code and check in. So let's see how that looks. So here's an Eclipse project. I have created one here. Let's go ahead and create another new project. Java project, let's just call it CONCORD-RTC Jira server project. I'm going to say finish. So I have a new project here. Now I'm working on the code actually. So just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to create a Java file. Let's just say server config.java. And I'm going to add a bunch of code here. Now I have completed my source control, meaning my coding. Now I'm ready to share it with the team. What I would do, I would right-click on my code, select team, and share the project. And it asks, because of the flow target, where do you want to send it to? Now obviously I don't want to deliver that into the web component. This is my server packaging. I'm a different team now. So I'm saying deliver my code into the server component of that stream. And you have the option to ignore executables and class files and other libraries. You don't want, obviously you don't want them in your source control. You can specify those ignore patterns here and say finish. Now as you see, the icons here, it shows that I have a code checked in into my workspace, but it is not yet delivered into the stream. It's a two-step process. There is no concept of checkout within RTC. You just load it, work on it, and then you check in and deliver. But there is functionality available to lock files. So I'm going to go ahead and say deliver. But prior to delivering this, let's take a quick look at what the server looks like right now. Show repository files. It is blank. Whereas if you see the same component within your repository files, you will see that there are files, that is my source code, added. It's actually a three-step process. There is a stream, and then your own repository workspace that's still within RTC, and then your sandbox, which is your desktop or laptop, wherever your code is. So when you deliver the code from your laptop, from your sandbox, when you do check-in, it goes into your workspace within JAS server. But it is only when you deliver, it gets into the stream for other team members. So I'm going to go ahead and say deliver. It says that I have made some changes to other files which I haven't checked in. Do you want me to deliver those also? I'm going to say go ahead and check in those and deliver them as well. So now let's take a look again within the server component. Now you see that the server module that I developed is shared with the team. From this point on, that linkage is established. You will immediately see that that orange icon that you see shows that it is connected with the repository, and from this point on, as you make changes to the code here, they are going to be available as changes, and you can simply do regular check-in and deliver as a developer would do normally. So that's source control at a very high level, although there are several operations that we can get into on a more focused presentation just in RTC in another webinar that we're in the process of planning. So what are the other things that developer would do besides source control? Building the source that was delivered. So you would go into the build component, and obviously you need a build engine and a build definition. And you would go into the build module of RTC, and you would say create a new build definition or create a new build engine. Let's go ahead and create a new build engine. As you see here, JAS comes with a build engine, JAS build engine. Or if you're going to use Hudson's and Jenkins, you can choose that. There's rational build agent. You can specify what type of build engines you're going to use and create one. And then you would create a build definition. Once again, you can choose what type of build definition. Is it Ant-based JAS build engine, or is it rational build, or Jenkins, Hudson's, whichever it is. You specify a build definition, and I've created one here, and this is where you would specify all the parameters for the build process. Details such as the schedule. Is it a continuous build, or is it a scheduled build, or do you have other properties where it is going to be deployed once the build is done? should anybody be notified via email once the build is completed? Where should the source be read from for doing the build? You can specify the workspace where all the files that need to be read, and other options like accept latest changes before loading and build only if there are changes from the previous build. So you would specify all of these configuration parameters here, and that's it. And you would associate that with the build engine that you had created before. And assuming that your build engine is running and listening, you can just go ahead and say request a build. So it is going to follow the process as you define the build definition, read the source, and generate the build output. And then you can go and see that we show the build results, and you can open up and see whether it's succeeded or failed and whatnot. So that's in a nutshell covers the change and configuration management aspects of JAF. Now let's move on with the quality management. Let's go back into our web interface. As I showed here, for the plan that we had created, we associated that with the requirement collection from RM and a test plan from QM. Let me go ahead and open up the QM module here, and we'll explore the QM project. So the QM module actually has some additional menu items where it also would allow you to create and manage requirements right from here, and change requests and tasks and defects from change and configuration module from within this application. Although behind the scenes, it utilizes the modules from the corresponding application. You just have an interface right from here. So here's where you would do your planning for quality assurance, your test plan, and your test scripts and test suites and test data and whatnot. Define your lab environment, what browsers on what machines and what operating systems. You can associate your QA operations with a specific builds that were created from the CCM application, and you can run your test scripts here, and then you can report on it. So let's go ahead and create a browse test plan. So of course you can create your own test plan here, give it a name, and then supply the rest of the parameters. But I'm going to utilize the one that we have created here. So this is my test plan that we have associated with the requirement and the source code and the plan and whatnot. And you have other options here to supply the business objectives and test objectives. Requirement collection links. So this is where we would establish linkage between QA artifacts and the requirement artifacts. You would simply add new links, and then that is going to bring up, just like how we did this in the CCM module, establishing linking between CCM to requirement. You can establish link between QM artifact and RM artifacts here. So I have established the linking between that RTC JIRA requirements release 5 artifacts that we did. And the cool thing about it is you can reconcile the requirements in collections. So let's take a look at what these look like. So as you see here, for the requirement collection, it brought in what the requirements are and what are the test cases. Obviously, some of them don't have test cases. So this gives you your coverage gap. Do I have all the requirements covered by the test cases. If not, I'll have to create those. Or if you add a new requirement in Autumn, for example, in the middle of the project, you can click on this reconcile, and it would bring over any requirements that were added and then show you what requirements don't have test cases here. Now for each one of the requirement, you can just select them all and then say test cases. This may be a process individually defined outside of QM, or if the steps are already documented, you want to just take the steps from these documents that are available, it can generate the test case based on the text that is available within these artifacts itself. Let's just do an example here. So for this requirement, target server configuration, I'm going to say generate a test case. So I'm going to give it a detail in test case for, and I'll just say this is for integration and say OK. Now you'll see that a test case is generated, and then it is linked to the requirement. So likewise, you can create your test case artifacts and establish linkage to your requirements for all the requirements. And for development plan, you establish linkage between your QA artifacts and the plans that you have for development. That is the release backlog, sprint backlog. And so what that does is you can create tasks and defects right from here, which would be categorized and associated with those plans. So it's seamless, and all three components are tightly integrated so that you have good traceability between each kind of artifacts within the realm of JAS. Test environment. You can go and create what platforms you want to cover within your testing scope. And I have an example here. You can create what browsers and what database and what operating systems, etc. You're basically defining your test strategy and setting up the environment. I have created a platform coverage here with my selections for my project need, and then based on that I can create a test environment configuration if you are going to do the same test with different configuration. For example, you can choose, if I open that one, you'll see that this particular configuration is for testing on x86 processor in a Windows platform with the DB2, WebSphere, and Chrome and whatnot. You can go and view your test cases that you have generated. You can either, obviously, you can do these manually as well. And then once you have your test cases created, you can also generate test scripts from design. So you'll just select the appropriate test cases and say create test scripts from design, and let's just do for one for now. So is it a manual script? Go ahead and create OK. Now if I go under my test scripts, we would see that the test scripts that I just created from the menu option over there. And now that we have our test scripts and test cases created, all I have to do is go ahead and generate an execution record or run them. So I can specify a test script and say run the test case. It is going to follow the steps that are outlined in the script, and it is going to give me the execution records. which is going to show what is the status of each test script that we have executed. In this case, this one is passed and the other one is not executed. So there's more details that we can cover at a later session focusing on the quality management aspects of it, but I hope that it kind of gives you a flavor. Okay. I hope it addressed to me. Anyway, so yeah, so that kind of gives for the QM module, and we would plan on webinars where we can go into the details in a little deeper. We have about a minute left. The last thing I want to show in CLM is reporting. One of the applications, CCM and RM, they all have a reporting module within the application itself. So within CCM, there are a number of reports that come pre-packaged. They are build-based reports, full reports, work item reports. Okay. QM also has a bunch of reports for that has details about the required executions and the testing artifacts, the defects. You can just pick these reports and just run them. Also, if you want more custom reports, there's a report builder component available that where you can go and customize the create your own reports and run them as needed. For the most part, these reports are based on live data, and more practically speaking, you would want to do data collection every night so that you have cumulative reports based on the data over time. That's what the data collection component is, but we're going to go into all those in future webinars in more in detail. So I hope that that covers the flavor of a CLM perspective, planning and perspective, quality management perspective. As you know, if you have questions from the session, please go ahead and either type it up in the chat window. If you have a minute, we'll leave the session on for a few minutes, or you can also email, and we would be happy to respond to those questions as quickly as possible. Ingrid, back to you.
Well, this concludes our time. Thank you for registering for SCM Solutions webinar. We'll be having future webinars for the remainder of the year. Thank you all for attending.